finally doing Iran, which I should have done a couple of days ago, so yeah. As Iran, or Persia as you call it, ancient Persian art, has had like a long history that has remained, and they've managed to remain independent for most of it. And yeah, as today Iran has a population of about 17 million people, and their principal ethnic groups are like 51% Persians, 24% Azeri, 8% Iraqi and Mazandarani, 7% Kurd, and 3% Arab, as Iran is a Islamic country and all, with 89% of being 81 being Shia Muslims, or 10% of Sunni, and the remaining 1% are Jewish. Baha'i alongside the Jew, identify as being Jewish, Baha'i or Zoroastrian. As a Baha'i and Zoroastrian faiths originated in Iran, and major languages in Iran are like Persian, like Fars Persian, and Persian dialects, which make up 58% of the population. Turkic and Turkic dialect make up 26%, Kurdish about 9%, Luri about 2%, Baluchi 1%, in Arabic 1%, Turkish 1%, and since 1979 Iran has been an Islamic republic, as Iran is situated east of Iraq beyond the Tigris River, Shatt al-Arab waterway, and east of the Persian Gulf across from Saudi Arabia. To the north of borders former Soviet Central Asian countries, including Armenia, Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan and the Caspian Sea, and it also borders on Afghanistan and Pakistan in the east and Turkey to the west. As Iran has a semi-arid climate for the most part, but is extremely rich in natural resources and all. In particular, this is nearly 10% of the world's proven oil reserves, and about 16% of the world's gas reserves, and Iran has the second largest reserves in the world. And additionally, it has a considerable quantities of very low grade uranium. However, the poor economic plans applying and sanctions by countries like low literacy rates, high birth rates, and long and bloody war with Iraq have kept Iran economically poor, with a GDP of about $7,000 and employment at about 16%. In recent years, government programs that encourage family planning and significant immigration have reduced the rate of population increase to about 1% a year. The birth rate is now 17 per thousand, comparable with Western industrialized countries, and literacy is up to 79%. And nearly more than one time after the death in 1779 of Muhammad Karim Khan Zand, who was a Zand dynasty ruler of southern Persia. Muhammad Khan, leader of the Qajar tribe, unified and defeated numerous rivals and brought all Iran under his rule, establishing establishing the Qajar dynasty. And by 1794 he had eliminated all his rivals and retaken former Iranian territories in Georgia and the Caucasus. As Aga Muhammad established his capital in Tehran, a village near the ruins of the ancient city of Ray. In 1796 he was formally crowned as Shah, but he was assassinated in 1797, and was succeeded by his nephew Fath Ali Shah. Fath Ali Shah went to war twice against Russia, which expanded from north into the Caucasus Mountains, and Iran suffered major military defeats in both wars, and signing the Treaty of Golestan in 1813, as the Treaty of Turkmenchi in 1828 and seceding Russia, Georgia, and the North Caucasus, and eventually the entire sea area north of the Aras River, which includes present-day Armenia and Azerbaijan. Fath Ali Shah died in 1834 and was succeeded by Muhammad Shah, and he died in 1848 and was succeeded by Nasser ad-Din Shah. As Nasser ad-Din Shah was said to be a list of the ruler of the Qajar dynasty and all, of the Qajar rulers and all. He was introduced to Western science, technology, and educational methods, and began the modernization of Iran. And he tried to play off the imperial powers like Great Britain and Russia, and to preserve Iran's independence, but he was not able to prevent Britain and Russia from encroaching into regions and of traditional Iranian influence. And in 1856, Britain prevented Iran from reasserting control over Herat and helped to make Herat a part of what is now Afghanistan. And by 1881, Russia had conquered present-day Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan, bringing Russia's frontier to Iran's northeastern border and severing historic Iranian connections to Bukhara and Samarkand. As trade concessions by Iran put the Iranian economy under British control. As Nasser ad-Din Shah was assassinated in 1896 by Mirza Reza Khamenei, and in 1896 he and his son Mustafa ad-Din assumed the throne. As Mustafa ad-Din Shah was a weak and ineffectual ruler and spent two large loans from Russia, partly on trips to Europe and all, as public anger was fueled by the Shah's willingness to grant concessions to Europeans in return for generous payments to him and his officials. As the Shah failed to respond to protests by the religious establishments, merchants, and other classes, and instituted repressive measures, as a large number of merchants and clerical leaders took sanctuary from probate arrest in mosques in Tehran and outside the capital in January 1906, and an additional 10,000 people, led by the merchants, took sanctuary in June in the compound of the British legation in Tehran, following the Shah's failure to grant a promised National Assembly. And in August, the Shah was forced to issue a decree promising a constitution, and in October an elected assembly convened and drew up a constitution that provided for strict limitations on royal power, and elected parliament or Majlis with wide powers and to represent the people, a government with a cabinet subject to confirmation by the Majlis, as the Shah signed the constitution on December 30th, 1906, but died 5 years later. As supplementary fundamental laws approved in 1907 provided within limits of freedom of press, speech, and association and for security of life and property. The constitutional revolution marks the end of the medieval period of Iran, and are very proud of this event. However, the constitution remained, to a large extent, a dead letter, as Muhammad Ali Shah, son of Mustafa ad-Din, took office in 1907. With Russian backing, he attempted to rescind the constitution and abolish parliamentary government. In June 1908, he used his Russian officered Persian Cossacks brigade to bombard the Majlis building. However, he arrested many of the deputies and closed down the assembly as resistance to the Shah. However, succeeded in several cities and elsewhere, and in July 1909, constitutional forces marched from Rashat and Isfahan to Tehran and deposed the Shah and re-established the constitution. The ex-Shah went into exile in Russia, as the upheaval of a constitutional revolution and civil war had undermined stability and trade. as the ex-Shah, with Russian support, landed troops in Iran in July 1910 in an attempt to regain his throne, and the hope of a constitutional revolution would inaugurate the new era of independence from the great powers. When under the Anglo-Russian Agreement of 1907, Britain and Russia agreed to divide Iran into spheres of influence, as the Russians were to enjoy exclusive rights to pursue their interest in the northern sphere, and the British in the southern and eastern, and both powers would be free to compete for the economic and political advantages in a neutral sphere in the centre. The crisis was precipitated when Morgan Shuster, United States Administrator, hired a treasurer general by the Persian government to reform its finances, and sought to collect taxes from powerful officials under Russian protection. He attempted to send members of the Treasury Gendarmerie into the Russian zone. As the Russians issued an ultimatum demanding Shuster's dismissal, as Russian troops already in the country moved to occupy the capital, and to prevent the Russian takeover on December 20th, 1911. Bakhtiari chiefs and their troops surrounded the Majlis building, forced acceptance of a Russian ultimatum, and shut down the assembly, once again suspending the constitution. A period of government by Bakhtiari chiefs ensured until Ahmed Shah, who was 11 when he ascended to the throne, came of age. As Ahmed proved to be incompetent and was unable to preserve the integrity of Iran, the occupation of Persia during World War I, 1914 to 1918, by Russian, British and Ottoman troops was a blow from which his government never effectively recovered from. As Reza Shah, a coup d'etat in February 1921, established Reza Khan, a soldier who led the coup as ruler. After suppressing several rebellions, he became Shah in 1925, ruling until 1941 as Reza Shah Pahlavi. Reza Shah's government transformed Iran into many positive ways, but his dictatorial policies caused unrest and hate, as his foreign policy failed to keep Iran independent, and managed at the same time managed to alienate the Soviets and the British. As Reza Shah had ambitious plans for modernizing Iran, including large-scale industries, major infrastructure projects, and railroads and national public education system, and reformed judiciary, and improvements of the healthcare. He wanted a strong centralized government managed by educated personnel to carry out his plans, and he sent hundreds of Iranians, including his son, to Europe for training. As Reza Shah's numerous development projects transformed Iran into an industrial urbanized country, as public education progressed rapidly, and new social classes like a professional middle class and an industrial working class emerged. And in 1935, the name of the country was changed from Persia to Iran, as Reza Shah tried to avoid involvement with Britain and the Soviet Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, as that was the official name of the Soviet Union. And though many of his developed projects required foreign technical expertise, he avoided awarding contracts to British and Soviet companies, as Britain owned the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, and through it controlled all of Iran's oil resources, but Reza Shah shunned Britain and got technical assistance from Germany, France, Italy, and other European countries. And in 1939, when World War II broke out, Reza Shah proclaimed Iranian neutrality. However, Britain insisted that German engineers and technicians in Iran were spies, and demanded that all German citizens must be expelled. As Reza Shah refused, claiming that this would adversely impact his development projects. The suspicion was not absent about the fact that the Shah had concluded a secret agreement with Nazi Germany. After Britain and the Soviet Union became allies in World War II, they turned their attention to Iran, and both countries eyed a newly opened Trans-Iranian Railroad as an attractive route to transport from the Persian Gulf to the Soviet region. And in August 1941, because of Iranian refusal to expel German nationals, Britain and the USSR invaded Iran and arrested and exiled Reza Shah, who took control of Iranian communications and railroads. And in 1942, the United States sent a military force to Iran to help maintain and operate sections of the railroad. As Mohammad Shah, the British and Soviet authorities constrained constitutional government and permitted Reza Shah's son, Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi, to succeed to the throne on September 16, 1941, and in January 4, 1942, Britain and Russia signed an agreement with Iran to respect Iran's independence and to withdraw their troops within 6 months after the end of the war. In 1943, the Tehran Conference, the US reaffirmed its commitment, and in 1945, the USSR refused to announce a timetable to leave Iran's northwestern province of East Azerbaijan and West Azerbaijan, where Soviet-supported autonomy movement has developed. And as the USSR withdrew its troops in May 1946, and this episode was one of the harbingers of the emerging Cold War. As Iran's political system began to mature, as political parties were organised, in 1944, Majlis elections were the first generally competitive elections in over 20 years, as foreign influence and interference remained a very sensitive issue for all parties, as the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, AIOC, owned by the British government, continued to extract and market Iranian oil. At the end of the war, Iranians began to demand nationalisation of the oil industry, and demand that became the centrepiece of Iranian nationalism. And despite his vow to act as a constitutional monarch who would defer the power of the parliamentary government, Mohammad Reza Shah increasingly involved himself in government affairs and opposed or thwarted strong prime ministers, prone to indecision. However, Mohammad Reza relied more on manipulation than on leadership. He concentrated on reviving the army and ensuring that he would remain under royal control as the main power base of the monarch. In 1949, the Tudeh Communist Party was banned after an assassination attempt on the Shah, and the Shah's powers were expanded. As the rise and fall of Mossadegh in 1951, the Iranian parliament voted to nationalise the oil industry, then controlled by Britain, as legislators backing the law elected its leading advocate, Dr. Mohammad Mossadegh, as Prime Minister following the assassination of his predecessor. As Britain responded with threats and sanctions, however, Britain could not persuade the USA under the Truman administration, to take any action, and at the time, as Mossadegh was an aging, eccentric academic who was immensely popular because of his stands for the common people. He is a nationalist and not a communist, though Tudeh was a communist party, supported him for a time. Nonetheless, the British and US governments were able to eventually persuade themselves that Mossadegh was about to align Iran with the USSR. As to Dr. Mossadegh took a very inflexible position and was unable to compromise with Britain, which won the support of the major oil companies in imposing an effective global boycott on Iranian oil, as Dr. Mossadegh became an anti-imperialist hero to the developing world, and his eccentricities, which became his trademark, including conducting business in bed dressed in pyjamas, weeping publicly, and frequent complaints about poor health, and raised by a wave of popularity. Mossadegh showed signs of demagoguery and dictatorial government, and when the Shah refused his demands for control of armed forces in 1942, Dr. Mossadegh resigned. He was reinstated as the face of popular rights, as he's very probably knew he would be. Next, he conducted a national referendum to dissolve Parliament, and by 1953, President Eisenhower had become President of the US, as anti-communist hysteria was reaching its peak, as an Iranian general became offered to help overthrow of Mossadegh, and the British were able to persuade the Americans to go ahead with a coup in August. With a very scant resources and shoestring operational plan, the CIA set out to remove Mossadegh, and the plan almost failed as the Shah, never resolute, had fled to Baghdad and had to be enticed to continue playing his part from there. As the army was loyal to the Shah, and Mossadegh was overthrown and arrested. As a coup earned USA and Britain the lasting hatred of the large sectors of Iranian public opinion. United communists, nationalists and Shia clericists behind an enmity foreign meddling Mossadegh, becoming folk hero of Iranian nationalism. And in the context of regional turmoil in the Cold War, the Shah established himself as an indispensable ally to the West. And in the Middle East, Iran stood out as one of the few friends of Israel, a friendship that allegedly extended to Israeli help during the Savak, the hated Iranian secret service, and domestically adopted reform policies, culminating in the 1963 program known as the White Revolution, which included land reform, the extension of voting rights to women, and the elimination of illiteracy. As these measures were an increasingly arbitrariness of the Shah's rule provoked both religious leaders who feared losing their traditional authorities and intellectuals seeking democratic reforms, and these opponents criticised the Shah's for violation of the constitution, which placed limits on royal power and provided a representative government, and for the subservience to the United States, as the Shah saw himself as the heir to the kings of the ancient Iran. In 1967, he staged an elaborate coronation ceremony, styling himself as Shah and Shah, meaning King of Kings, and in 1971 he held an extravagant celebration of 2,500 years of Persian monarchy, and in 1976 he replaced the Islamic calendar with an imperial calendar, which began with the foundation of the Persian Empire around 500 BC. And these actions were aimed at sidelining the Islamic religion, and it excited the opposition of Muslim groups which rallied around Ayatollah Khomeini, as the Shah suppressed and marginalized opponents with the help of Iran's Security and Intelligence Organization, as the Savak, using arbitrary arrest, imprisonment, exile and torture, exciting profound and widespread discontent as Islamic leaders, particularly the exiled cleric Ayatollah Khomeini, channeled the discontent into a populist Islamist ideology, as Ayatollah Khomeini had been exiled in 1964 and had been living in Najaf, Iraq since 1965, and from 1978 in France as Najaf. Khomeini expanded his ideology of absolutist theocratic rule, Faqih, led by a supreme leader, an authority worthy of emulation. As a Marj al-Taqlid, ideology was spread throughout books and cassettes smuggled into Iran. However, beginning in 1978, Khomeini began publicizing more democratic views and pretending that he envisioned democratic rule in Iran, and that he would not be a leader of the government, as riots erupted in Iran, ignited by various real and or manufactured pretexts. As suffering ill health, the Shah left Iran on the 16th of January 1979, and he announced that he was leaving for an 18-month leave of absence. And he had appointed Shapur Bakhtiar as Prime Minister, and Shapur Bakhtiar was able to keep order with the help of Supreme Army Councils. Explicitly, Bakhtiar not only allowed the Ayatollah Khomeini to return to Iran, but he publicly invited him to return. As Bakhtiar eventually died, went to France and was assassinated, probably by Iranian agents in 1991, as Ayatollah Khomeini returned to Iran on February the 1st. By invitation of the interim government, Bakhtiar had invited the means of his own destruction, as he soon went into hiding and was eventually exiled to Paris, as mass purges of supporters of the Shah began, and hundreds were executed, and revolutionary courts set to work almost immediately in a school building in Tehran, as revolutionary courts were established in provincial centres soon after, as the Tehran court passed death sentences to 4 of the Shah's generals on February 16, 1979, as all 4 were executed by firing squad, with more executions of military and police officers, Savak agents, cabinet ministers, majlis deputies, and the officials of the Shah's regime followed. In March of 1979, a referendum was held regarding the new form of government to be established in Iran. As only one form of government, the Islamic Republic, appeared on the ballot and was approved by 98% of the voters in non-secret elections, as Mehdi Bezargan was appointed Prime Minister, and a truly revolutionary and anarchic situation gripped Iran, and semi-independent revolutionary committees not answerable to the central authority took over various government tasks, as factory workers, civil servants, white-collar employees and students were often in control, demanding a say in running their organisations and choosing their chiefs, as governors, military commanders, and other official appointed by the Prime Minister were frequently rejected by the lower rank or local inhabitants. At the same time, the Ayatollah Khomeini, who headed the Revolutionary Council, ran his own version of government, pushing Iran into the direction of an Islamist theocracy, as they mobilised street mobs to force their programs on the government, as Iran soon plagued by ethnic unrest, as Kurds, Arabs, Turkmens, and other minorities demanded varying degrees of autonomy. Beginning in August 1979, the revolutionary courts tried to pass death sentences on members of ethnic minorities involved in the disturbances. And in May 1979, Ayatollah Khomeini created the Pashtun-i Inqilab-i Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or Revolutionary Guards, or IRGC, as a Pashtun was conceived as a force loyal to the revolution and clerical leaders, as opposed to the regular army, which fought to be loyal to the civil government. Soon after, Khomeini also ordered the creation of Basij volunteers, two groups where functioned both as internal police, protecting the government, and as a politically reliable army against foreign foes, as the IRGC also used to foment revolution and resistance abroad, particularly in Lebanon, where it helped and farm train the Hezbollah, as the Hezbollah is what I know is a terrorist organisation, as the revolutionary government began veering to the right as the power was concentrated around the clerics, as leftist newspapers were banned, and rallies of the National Democratic Front were broken up as opposition leaders were arrested, and the powers of the clerics increased. The state began a program of nationalisation and also of religious repression, in particular against women, as students and others were thought they were eliminating The Shah to bring democracy to Iran would eventually be bitterly disappointed. As Ayatollah Khomeini, other clerics delivered extremist and threatening speeches against the United States and against its Persian Gulf allies. And on the other hand, the government, still headed by Bazargan, tried to maintain good relations with the United States, especially as supply of spare parts for the army and oil industry were desperately needed. And as throughout the of the French and Russian revolutions, domestic chaos and repression were followed by foreign entanglements and intervention, and as on the 1st of November 1979, Bazargan met with President Carter's National Security Advisor, Zbigniew Brzezinski, in Algiers. Meanwhile, the Shah, who was seriously ill with cancer, was admitted to the United States for medical treatment, as Iranian feared that Shah would use his visit to the United States to secure the United States support for an attempted overthrow of the Islamic Republic. And on the 1st of November 1979, hundreds of thousands of demonstrations in Tehran demanding extradition of the Shah. The press denounced Bazargan for a meeting with a key United States official. And on November the 4th, Iranian Islamic students stormed in the US embassy, taking 66 hostages, mostly Americans, and 14 were released before the end of November. As Prime Minister Mehdi Bazargan resigned, and no Prime Minister was named to replace him, as the Revolutionary Council took over the Prime Minister's functions until Abul Hassan Bandi Sadr, an independent associated with Ayatollah Khomeini, was elected. Initially had the support of Khomeini, but was tried increasingly to restart the rules of law and civil rights. He clashed with Muhammad Ali Barjai, the protege of the Revolutionary Council, who was appointed Prime Minister fresh. Waves of purges gutted the civil service and the army. And meanwhile, the hostage crisis was exacerbating revolutions with the United States and Western European countries as president of Iranian assets held by American banks in the United States and abroad. As Bandi Sadr's views, various attempts to resolve the crisis failed, as the Shah made his home in Panama. But Bandi Sadr and Foreign Minister Qutb Zadeh attempted to arrange for the Shah to be arrested by the Panamanian authorities and extradited to Iran, but the Shah had left Panama for Egypt on the 23rd of March 1980 before anything could be done. And in April 1980, the United States tried to rescue the hostages by secretly landing an aircraft and troops near Tabas, near Dasht-e Kavir Desert in eastern Iran, at a base known as Desert 1, as the attempt was, however, failed, as the two helicopters and the mission commander decided to abort the mission, as the helicopter and C-130 transport aircraft collided, killing 8 United States servicemen, as the French pilot plots against the Iranian government, and real or imagined, were discovered in the army while purges followed. As negotiations for the release of the hostages began on the 14th of September 1918 in West Germany and were successfully concluded in January, possibly to personally humiliate outgoing President Carter, as the hostages were released only after Ronald Reagan took office as president on January the 20th, 1981. And tensions between Iran and Iraq led to the border incidents in April 1980. Apparently, Saddam Hussein of Iraq saw a chance to make territorial in the expanses of Iran. With Facebook, I have memories of some people I know, and perhaps to overthrow the regime of the Ayatollahs. which was seen as both a threat to conservative Sunni regimes like Saudi Arabia and pan-Arab regimes like that of Saddam Hussein, as Iranian propagandists were spreading the message of the Islamic Revolution throughout the Persian Gulf, and Iraqis feared this propaganda would infect the Shia population of Iraq. His religious life had been suppressed by Saddam Hussein, as Iraqi relations with Iran were dominated by geography. Iraq and Iran disputed navigation rights, which were regulated by the Algiers Agreement of 1975, and Iraq coveted territories in Iran. And on the 17th of September, Saddam Hussein abrogated the Algiers Agreement. On September 1922, September 22nd, Iraq began a massive invasion of Iran, citing an alleged Iranian assassination attempt of Iraqi Foreign Minister Tariq Aziz as one of the excuses, as Iran had isolated itself, as Iran's foreign policy had alienated from virtually every country in the world, and in particular the United States, which Ayatollah Khomeini was called the Great Satan, as Iran continued to export the Islamic Revolution throughout the war, instigating riots among Shia communities in Saudi Arabia, inspiring and armed territories in Lebanon who kidnapped US and British citizens. Iran could not get spare parts for its US-made military hardware, and other supplies from US countries or loans to carry the war. And conversely, Iraq receives substantial military, diplomatic support from virtually every Western country, as well as the USSR, and all Arab countries, as well as with the exception of Syria. And for much of the war, the Khomeini dominated government hesitated to give the army a leading role in combat because it doubted the army's political reliability, as the ill-trained Pashtun Revolutionary Guards were used extensively in the war instead, as Iraq used gas warfare on several occasions in the war. And during this period, Iran was also fighting a Kurdish uprising and insurrection led by Mujahideen and others, and the war exacted as many as 1 million casualties in total on both sides, according to some estimates. Despite their internal and foreign problems, the Iranians were quite surprisingly able to hold their own, using human wave attacks and other desperate tactics for the lack of better alternatives. And total war on both sides included attacks on shipping as well as civilian population centres. And unlike Iraq, Iran did not use gas or chemical weapons during the war. And Ayatollah Khomeini refused all efforts at mediation and insisted that Iran would fight until Saddam Hussein was removed from power in Iraq, as both countries finally agreed to a compromise peace in 1988, after Iraq had made some serious gains. And the war and army Pashtun rivalry accentuated difference between President Bani Sadr, who sided with the army, and Prime Minister Rajai, who backed the clerical movement and sided with the Pashtun. And by June 1981, Sadr lost the struggle and was impeached, as Prime Minister Mohammad Ali Rajai was elected Prime Minister. One of his emails for looking for jobs and all that. And as Prime Minister, Mohammad al-Rajai was elected as President, but in August, Rajai and Prime Minister Burhan were killed by bomb, apparently by the Mujahideen opposition. And in October 1981, Ali Khamenei was elected President, and he has remained in that office ever since. and with the dismissal of relatively moderate elements from power, going back to the right again, imposing Islamic legal system and Islamic code of social and moral behaviour, as opposition elements including the Mujahideen and Union of Communists attempted to reorganise and overthrow the government by force, and the government responded with fresh waves of repression and terror. Batches of 50 to 100 people were executed on a daily basis, following trials by revolutionary courts, and Amnesty International documented about 2,946 executions in the 12 months following Bani Sadr's impeachment, and a conservative figure because the authorities did not report all executions. Widespread revulsion caused the government to wind down the program of repression. And in February 1983, the government arrested over 1,000 leaders and members of the Tudeh party. Tudeh, if you remember, being the Communist Party. As the party was banned, leaders were imprisoned and members were put to death. And other than the religious factions, only Mehdi, Bazargan's IFM were permitted any freedom of activity by 1983. And even then it was only limited, very limited. And though the US would not officially sell arms to Iran beginning in 1985, the Reagan administration violated its own laws. And in a conflated swap deal, Israeli and other intermediaries sold TOL and Hawk missiles and other military hardware in return for cash and release for one of the more American hostages. This cash was used by the USA to finance an equally legal war against the Sandinista government of Nicaragua, as the arms sales were exposed at the end of 1986 and were presumably terminated. And in 1988, relations kind of broke down a little bit as the USS Vincennes shot down an Iranian civilian airliner with 279 passengers on board, killing everyone supposedly in error. And on the 20th of August 1988, a ceasefire was signed between Iran and Iraq, as both parties accept UN Resolution 589. As Ayatollah Khomeini died on the 3rd of June 1989 of a heart attack, as President Ali Khamenei assumed the role of Supreme Spiritual Leader, an assembly of experts, ulama, met in an emergency session on the June 4th, as elected President Khamenei, the new Vali Farki, their supreme spiritual leader, simultaneously promoting his status of Ayatollah, and Ali Abkar Hashemi Rafsanjani, Speaker of the Majlis, the parliament, was elected president, as the Iranian economy was devastated by the war, by Western trade boycotts, and by net and erratic economic policies. A huge birth rate resulted in an unmanageable demographic disaster initially, but subsequently Iran changed its policy regarding population growth. Now it has one of the lowest rates of population increases in the Middle East, as coupled with an investment in education, especially education of women and literacy programs. However, unemployment remains high and drug addiction is rumoured to be a very serious problem, as food shortages have led to periodic riots such as those that broke out in 1991. In 1997, Hajat al-Islam Mohammed Khatami was elected as president, as he pursued political reform and liberalisation, as he was supported by broad sectors of society, and he also tried to normalise relations with the West and reduce tensions in the region, as his efforts for democracy were frustrated by the veto powers of the Supreme Council, which can bar any measures it pleases. Outstanding issues with West include support of terror and Iran's arbitrary human rights practices, which until recently had stoning women to death for adultery, as well as periodic purges of political opponents, censorship of the press, and so on and so forth. As the position of women in Iran were relatively good compared to some Muslim countries, but there is some room for improvement and all still. As Iran does not support Sunni Al-Qaeda terrorist network, as far as I'm aware, Sunni terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda and all those, like Taliban, don't particularly like Shia Muslims and all that, and has cooperated in arresting Al-Qaeda members. However, Iran supports terror groups including the Lebanese Hezbollah, the Islamic Jihad in Gaza and West Bank, and other groups in Egypt, Algeria, and other places. As Iranian intelligence of the Hezbollah were behind the bombing of a Jewish center in Argentina, and in the 1980s, Iran and the Hezbollah apparently were responsible for the bombing of the US Embassy and Marine barracks in Lebanon, as Iranian-funded groups kidnapped numerous American and other Europeans and held them hostage, as the mastermind behind Hezbollah Iranian terror operations was Imad Malkhane, who was killed in Damascus on February 12, 2008, possibly by Israeli agents, by the intelligence services of a different country that may have cooperated with Israel and all. And in January 2002, Israeli security forces confiscated a boatload of arms, as the Korean A, which they claimed originated in Iran, what is not known for its shipments, was authorized by the Iranian government, as Mohammed Khatami was re-elected as president in 2001 by a huge majority in relatively free elections, as the Iranians were convinced that they had a mandate for reform, but reform has proceeded slowly, as Iran was racked repeatedly by student demonstrations and riots, in which students seeking democracy and supported reform bills back in the Kashmir clash with Bibliography by parliamentary groups and with police. And towards the end of 2003, Iran's nuclear program came under scrutiny of the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, as work on a nuclear reactor to build the Siemens at Bashari had begun at the time of the Shah and was nearly completed in 1979, when the revolution occurred, as Ayatollah Khomeini pronounced the project un-Islamic, as the Iraqis bombed and damaged the Bashari site during the Iran-Iraq War. However, Iran decided subsequently to renew the program, as nuclear power had fallen out of favour in most countries since a reactor mishap at 3 Mile Island in 1979, and more especially after the Chernobyl disaster in the former Soviet Union. However, Iranians claimed that they wanted to develop nuclear power as an alternative to fossil fuels, citing pollution concerns, as well as eventual depletion, and indeed Tehran was very polluted primarily because of vehicle and refinery emissions, and this was partly due to subsidies of oil prices by the Iranian government. And though it was over 9% of the world's oil reserves and over 16% of the oil gas, Iran had neglected its fossil fuel substrates because foreign companies would not provide spare parts and know-how following the revolution, and wells may have become unstable due to neglect, and Iran still has more than enough gas and oil to meet increasing energy needs through many years to come, as Iran contracted with Russia to install a reactor to replace a Siemens reactor destroyed by the Iraqis during the Iran-Iraq War, and this project was under the IAEA supervision in accord with the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, of which Iran is signatory. There were reports of informants, and it was discovered that Iran had additional nuclear projects that were concealed from the IAEA and the world, and Iran was manufacturing and installing a large number of gas centrifuges, and these can be used to purify low-grade uranium ore, such as that which Iran possess, to produce in abundance and into reactor fuel-grade uranium, and they can also be used to produce weapons-grade U-235 isotope. And to date, Iran has about 1,000 kilograms of low-enriched uranium (LEU), enough to make a bomb with further refinement. And Iran may want nuclear weapons to balance Israeli nuclear capabilities as a counterweight to Pakistani nuclear capabilities, and additionally, Iran is building a heavy water plant and other facilities at Natanz, Iraq, and elsewhere. And heavy water is not always required for the Russian-built reactor at Bushehr, as Iraq heavy water research reactor, the type that can be used to create fissionable plutonium. And the US intelligence believe that Iran had a program to construct nuclear weapons, but this may have been terminated in around 2003, and it is not known that it has been resumed, as the IAEA reports insist that there is no evidence of Iranian nuclear weapons development, but it is also noted that Iran has failed to comply with all inspection requests. And the head of Mossad, which is the Israeli intelligence organization, Meir Dagan, has estimated that Iran will have developed and could develop nuclear weapons by 2014, which was currently 4 years ago now, and the estimate agrees with US intelligence. However, others had set a date closer to the time, and many are suspicious of a large investment of nuclear energy by a poor country to tremendous fossil fuel reserves. They believe it could only be an indication that his country is developing nuclear weapons, as both Israel and the United States have been watching the Iranian nuclear program with concern and all. Though there has been speculation that the Israeli would strike the Bushehr reactor and its struck the Al-Sirak reactor in Iraq in 1981. The situation is not comparable. Bushehr was not a breeder reactor used to make nuclear fuel, and Bushehr is not a nuclear facility in Iran, so that striking Bushehr would not destroy the nuclear program. As the IAEA inspectors became uneasy after finding several discrepancies in Iranian disclosure about the program, after finding traces of highly enriched uranium in Iranian nuclear sites, Iran claims that these traces were present in machinery that were shipped to them from abroad, as the IAEA gave Iran until October 31st to submit a full account of its nuclear program, and also asked for the rights to snap inspections and other measures. Initial resistance, Iran complied. After initial resistance, Iran complied, submitting the report ahead of time, and agreeing to suspend the upgrading of the uranium. However, it resumed enrichment by the uranium subsequently, and believed to have in excess of 1,000 kilograms of 5% LEU enriched uranium. As Mahmoud Ahmadinejad was elected president of Iran in 2005 in place of the former Kashmir and began pursuing hardline both at home and abroad, as dress codes of persecution and minorities became stricter and some homosexuals were hanged on. Abroad, Ahmadinejad refused to stop enrichment of uranium, as demanded by the United Nations, and conducted a blatantly racist campaign of Holocaust denial and anti-Semitism, vowing to pursue the goal of world without Zionism and America, as US officials had seriously ignored the threats against the United States, which tended to be the Iranian threats solely a threat against Israel until now, and the demonstration of George Bush pursued a confrontational policy against Iran, asking for the UN for the increasingly stringent sanctions against Iran. Iran did not respond in any positive way, although speculation have been rife about imminent US or Israeli military strikes against Iran. Every single one of those predictions have proved to be false so far, and the administration of Barack Obama has pursued a policy of re-engagement with Iran, but the policy hasn't exactly yielded any results. During 2009, presidential elections were held in Iran, and the results returned tremendously large in the victory of Mohammed Ahmadinejad, and the opponents had claimed obvious fraud, as supporters of opponents Mir Hossein Mousavi in particular took the streets to protest the fraud along, as the government refused to back down and killed at least 20 demonstrations, and possibly as many as 150. As many more were arrested, as telephone and other communications were suppressed, and opponents of the regime took to the internet, in particular Twitter, to help organise the protest, as the real struggle appears to have been between Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and Ayatollah Hashemi Rafsanjani. As I think there has been new elections since then, and someone else is currently in power and all. And yeah, I have a feeling that the current president is kind of like probably a little more liberal and all that. And yeah, moving on to language, as the next two bits squashed into like a page and all. And yeah, although Persian, like Farsi Persian, is a predominant and official language of Iran, and a number of languages and dialects from 3 language families, like the Indo-European, Altic, and Afro-Asiatic, are spoken, and for roughly 3/4 of Iranian speaking. One of the Indo-European languages, slightly more than half the population, speak a dialect of Persian, an Iranian language of the Indo-Iranian subgroup. The literary Persian, the language more refined variant, is understood by some degree by most Iranians, as Persian is also the most predominant language of literature, journalism and science, and less than 1/10 of the population speak Kurdish. The Lurs and Bakhtiari speak Luri, a language distinct from but is closely related to Persian, as Armenian, a single language of the Indo-European language family, is spoken only by the Armenian minority. And the Altic family is represented by the Turkic languages, which are spoken by roughly 1/4 of the population, mostly Azerbaijanian, a language similar to the modern-day Turkish. As a Turkmen language, another Turkic language is spoken in Iran only by a small number of those Turkmen, And of the other Semitic languages from Afro-Asiatic languages family, Arabic is the most widely spoken, but only a small percentage of the population speak its native tongue, as the main importance of the Arabic language in Iran is historical and religious. Following the Islamic conquest of Persia, Arabic virtually submerged Persian as a literary tongue. Since that time, Persian has adopted a large number of Arabic words, perhaps one-third of more of its lexicon, has borrowed grammatical construction from classical and, in some instances, colloquial Arabic. As under the monarchy, efforts were made to purge Arabic elements of the Persian language, but this was met with little success and ceased outright following the revolution, and since then the study of classical Arabic, the classic language of the Quran and all, has been emphasised in schools, and Arabic has remained the predominant language. Dominant language of learned religious discourse. And before 1979, English and French, and to a lesser degree German and Russian, were widely used by the educated languages, classes and all. And European languages are used less commonly, but are still taught at schools and universities and all. And moving on to legends quickly, and then moving on, talking about the mythology of Iskander, which means Alexander in Farsi, which kind of personifies the commander of Alexander the Great. As in Iranian mythology, he is described as a daring conqueror who came to the lands of Iran, and in those days Dar, the son of Darius Kadaman, ruled and was killed, and his country of Iran Shah was plundered and divided into 90 smaller lands, as Iskander burned the shrine of Iranians, Avestar, and crucified and killed priests and shahs. And after the adoption of Islam in Iran, legends Alexander the Great was described as a great and righteous ruler, and he was idolized, and in classical literature he was called Shah of Iranian blood. As Ferdowsi wrote in his Shahnameh that Iskander was a legitimate heir apparent born of Iranian mother, and as a legitimate heir he came to the lands of Iran, defeating Dar. That's why the Grandees killed Dar. King Dar killed him as a usurper. As Ferdowsi wrote about Iskander's campaign in unknown countries, describing unimaginable episodes, as one of them tells of a campaign to India, a country of the Brahmins, and Iskander's talk with the Brahmins about justice and equality. As Nizami Ganjari, a classic of Persian poetry, wrote Iskandarname, telling about the life of a ruler. So the poem begins with the birth of Iskander, life and campaign of murder of Darius, and search for the eternal water, and so on and so forth, and the poem ends only with the death of Iskander and all. And yeah, that is the video for today, Iran for you. It's not all bad in Iran, don't worry, but political tensions can get the better of some things and all. And yeah, I'll see you very soon for more the other two countries that I've intended to plan today, as well as the news later on. And yeah, I'll see you all very soon, and yeah, bye for now.